Hey guys, today's episode we're going to talk to Kristen and just discuss a little bit about growing your own hay. You know, what goes into all of that, sourcing your hay seeds, what kind of hay, what you need to know, particularly for like your area, your climate, everything, all the different aspects that go into growing your own hay. So,
Sure.
I guess I'd start with asking the question on, let's say you don't necessarily have a facility or something, you're growing hay for your own self, but you're going to source an area for hay. What's something that you would look into, let's say if you wanted to get another hay field?
So if I wanted to get another hay field, first thing I would look at is water rights. How much water does the field have? Does it have an irrigation pump where you pump out of the ground for water, or do you do flood irrigation? Because they both work very differently. The way you can check for water rights is to call the United States Water Master, and you can give them the parcel number. And there's usually a Water Master division in almost every state. And so for us, our office is in Carson City. We do also actually have one in Reno as well. Each area is kind of divided into a specific rotation according to the water master. And so it's important to know how much water you get. So for us, we get a certain number of hours every 15 days once the irrigation cycle starts.
And that's for flood irrigating?
For flood irrigating, yeah. And it's actually very similar as well for an irrigation well. I will put that those are expensive to operate. They take a lot of diesel. And so when you're looking at something, I would consider that as well, what the upkeep cost is on the irrigation well as what the cost is to maintain it. Now, the advantage of those versus what we do here, which is flood irrigate, is that you are a little bit less dependent on the snowpack that year. You are, of course, getting into the ethical issue of pumping from underground aquifers, because it takes a lot of water. Takes a lot of water to grow hay because it does need to be flooded. So even though we're all flood irrigating, okay, we don't have overhead sprinklers, but the irrigation well does pump it out of the ground into ditches, and you lose a lot of water that way because of evaporation. And especially where we're at, we lose the water because our humidity is so low. And it's like around 3%, I think, here in the summertime. So I would look at that. I would also look and see how flat the field is. How much work do I need to put into the field to make it to where I can flood irrigate it effectively? And you might ask, well, why can't you spray it overhead? Well, if you spray grass overhead, you have the potential to actually burn the leaves. If you put water on there and it's super hot out, just like some other plants, you can burn the leaves of the grass, and we don't want that. Grass also grows, depending on what type of grass you're growing. We grow Timothy grass, grows really tall. We have some photos of it like up to here in our hay fields. So flood irrigation is definitely the way to go that way, but you do need a very level field that way. We find it hard a lot of times if cows have been on it previously. Nothing against cows, but they have a tendency to dig up the field. They also have a tendency, when they do that, we know that noxious weeds come in. So when you go to look at a field, maybe look at it when the crop is mature, so you can actually see how many weeds are in there versus what you want to grow as well.
So going back to the amount of water and everything, is that also dependent on the type of hay you're growing?
It is, but it's mainly really that you want to look at the soil. So if you over irrigate soil, you can end up raising the alkalinity in the soil. If the alkalinity gets too high, then grasses won't really grow. And you do want to look at the water table. So, for example, kind of getting back to selecting a field, where we are at, our water table is really high. Water table is the how far basically you have to dig down to hit water. We have to dig down about 6 inches. So we cannot grow alfalfa here. We cannot. So it's kind of interesting. If you look at our valley, you'll see alfalfa on the side closest to the desert and Timothy grass on the side closest to the mountain, because our snow comes off the mountain, or our water comes off the mountain as it melts, comes down the valley, and we have unbelievable aquifers underneath here. We have just tons of water.
So how does that water affect the growth of alfalfa?
You know, I don't really know that, but I think it's because it affects the alkalinity of the soil. Certain soils do, well versus grass hay versus alfalfa. Because I am a Timothy grass farmer and not an alfalfa farmer, I know way more about Timothy grass than I do alfalfa.
So that would be something to look into too, like the type of grass that you're growing and what it is. Because I know that, you have a variety of options.
Yeah.
There's quite a lot of them. We have Timothy, we have orchard, there's, the oat and alfalfa and everything. I think the main popular ones, at least for horses, and these are Timothy and alfalfa.
Yes.
Orchard are like the top 3 there that I hear a lot of people talking about and offering. So, okay, let's say you get a field and everything. What are some of you find one that is everything that you want, or as close to everything that you want as you can get, and all? What would be the next steps?
Yeah, so the next step is, if there was nothing on it, okay, in our area, what I like to do is you usually have a local seed producer. And you can go to your local seed producer. In our area, that would be Comstock Seed. And you say, look, I have these kinds of horses. This is my kind of soil. And these people they're experts in this, okay? They know what your soil is like. They know what animals you're trying to feed, because cows need something different than horses, right? And that part I do understand about alfalfa, okay? So dairy cows, for example, do really well on like first and fourth cutting of alfalfa, because it's much higher in protein. It grows faster and stronger. You will also see a difference in grass between the first cutting and the second cutting, and we'll get into that a little bit later. Remind me if I forget. And so you go to, for example, us with Comstock Seed, and you say, look, this is the type of crop we want to grow. We have warm bloods here. We have quarter horses. And so for us, he recommended a Timothy ryegrass with a mix of bluegrass and clover in there. And so the thing is, with Timothy grass, it actually depletes the soil of nitrogen. It needs a lot of nitrogen to grow. And so if you didn't have these other plants in there that actually redeposit, so bluegrass and clover redeposit nitrogen back into the soil. So if you didn't have these other types of grass, we would have to heavily rely on fertilizers. We try really hard not to get in outside fertilizers into our ranch, because they are petroleum-based products. They are very expensive, for one, and for the second purpose. And it's just because it's petroleum-based, I don't actually feel that it is that natural. The problem with grass versus other crops is that you can't rotate it. It takes several years for the crop to get established, right? So we have a couple pastures out here that we're looking to reestablish. That's not going to happen in one season. That's going to be, we're going to grow it. We're going to get some weeds. We're going to have to knock out those weeds in different ways. Sometimes we burn. Sometimes we do have to use chemical, which I don't like, but that's just sometimes an option. It really takes several years to establish a grass. and, versus, other crops that a farmer can say, look at this year, I'm going to plant this crop because my soil needs X, Y, and Z. You should also get your soil tested to see what your soil is deficient in, because that will affect what you can grow. It will also affect what nutrition your horse gets. So we are, for example, selenium and vitamin E deficient here. So we know that in our area, our horses need to be supplemented for that. That is something we cannot overcome. So does that answer that question?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, so you're going to talk about a little bit on the differences in the cuttings.
Yeah. So depending on your area, you can, with grass, you can get between 1 and 4 cuttings a year. So grass hay, especially Timothy, needs a lot of heat. So right now we're kind of in trouble because we're not getting extremely high temperatures, but yet our snow is melting. Our first cutting, though, if you really, really look at our first cutting versus our second cutting, because we get 2 here generally. This year we'll probably get 1. You will notice that the first cutting is a lot leafier. The horses, I feel like, have a tendency to really like the leafier cutting better. It has more protein in it. It gets a lot more sugar because it actually grows a lot higher. It grows really, really fast. So you want to think about it when a plant is growing at a high rate. It's taking a lot of nutrition from that soil, driving it out of the soil into the plant to grow rapidly. In the fall cutting for us, people will notice that it is finer when they look at it. And it's finer, it's less leafier, it's also not as tall. And it's interesting because depending on the year, I feel that horses can eat more of that. They also have a tendency to eat that a lot slower. So I would have to look at more of the nutritional analysis if I were to amortize it over several years to see truly which one has the higher sugar, but I'm pretty sure it is the spring grasses for us, and that's why the horses just love it and eat it up. And it's funny because our boarders will sometimes say, oh, well, they don't really like this one as much. I'm like, yeah, that's the fall cutting, but that's the fall cutting you're going to get everywhere. The days are shorter, right? It's not as hot during the day. So the grass doesn't just grow, right? We know it needs that sun and it needs that heat to extract all of the nutrition out of the soil. The plus for it for me is that the horses do eat it slower, which we do know is good for their digestive tract, right? To kind of pick at it. And, but it's interesting because it looks so different. And the Timothy grass also doesn't come up as well for us during the second cutting because Timothy by far needs more heat than regular orchard ryegrass, which is another reason to mix your grasses. Because if we were just reliant on Timothy, we would basically get no second cutting. It's, if you go out through the field, you see these huge, beautiful pods in the spring that are dropping their seeds and coming down into the soil. That's our Timothy, really tall. If you look at it in the fall, which I bet you will now, you will notice that the Timothy is not the prolific grower. It's more of the orchard grass, the bluegrass that makes up that. And I really like my horses, if they don't have allergies, to eat a wide profile of hays and grasses. Of course, if you have somebody that is, allergic to something, well, you can't do that.
Right.
But yeah, I really like that. And I think that it is important. And if you just stuck on first cutting or second cutting, that can be so difficult from a storage standpoint for us as well. I mean, we don't have a hay barn that could fit a year's worth of first cutting in there for our horses. We just can't do that.
Yeah. Okay. So final question would be, you get everything set up, you have your grass that's growing and all. What goes into harvesting the hay?
Oh man.
And baling and,
yeah.
and all of that.
Yeah, that is like, you say a prayer to the weather gods. No.
Especially here for the wind.
Yeah. So for us, how do we determine when we're going to cut our hay versus what it starts with? So basically when we feel we want, especially with our first cutting, we want to cut it right before we feel that the grass stops growing so much. There is a point in which the Timothy grass will slow down because it's so tall. There also is a point in which it becomes so dense at the bottom that it's very, very difficult for the mowers to get through it. And so for us, we walk the fields, we kind of see what the moisture is like underneath, because we want as well our field to now dry out. We can't, otherwise you're going to get mold in your hay, you're going to get all kinds of bacterias, it's not going to dry, it's not a good thing. So we have to look at that. We have to look at the weather. And then once we have that lined up, we kind of call the guy that's going to come cut our hay. We don't have our own hay equipment here because we aren't a large enough operation to buy these very expensive tractors. And
have to have a very expensive building to store said expensive equipment.
And always way before this, we already have an agreement with them that they are going to cut our hay that year. So we call them, we get fit into the rotation. God bless them if they have a storm coming and they're trying to cut everybody's hay. Because one of the things you have to also factor in is once your hay is cut, they don't just come in and bale it right away. It has to lay on the ground and dry. So you better not have wind or rain or anything else in between. You got to get your sage out. Because I've had the wind blow it away and it's like $100 bills flying through the air. Yeah. It's terrible. Yes.
And when we talk about wind here, we get some serious severe wind.
Yeah.
Like it has been over 90 mile an hour.
Mm-hmm.
And it can get pretty crazy out here.
Yeah, it's not good.
It's not fun.
No. And so
we almost lost a shelter that one year.
Yes, we did. And so once it's laid out, let's say it's too wet. There is something called a tether that they can come through with. And we do have some other videos on this stuff as well too. And this year I'll try to get more videos of them tethering. They can come through and tether it, which is where they flip it essentially, and they lay it out and to dry it out faster. And once that is done, then they have a machine that comes in and puts it back into rows. Once that has happened, then they come in and bale it. So they come in and bale it once they know that the humidity is correct to make good flakes. Too dry, and you open the bale and it explodes. Too wet, you open the bale and you have mold. And so then they come in and bale it. Once the bales are on the ground, they come in behind with a retriever that picks it up and puts it into stacks. Once it's in stacks, it can either go into your hay barn or in front of your hay barn like we have here, because we did not design our hay barn well, and we'll do a video on that about what I would have done different. And so once you have that done for us, then we have another machine that comes in and puts it into our barn. It is a very complicated process. And if you think about what you end up paying per bale, essentially, for these farmers to come in and do all of this, it's honestly not enough. But the problem is that, each one of these machines, I would say minimum is $60,000 to $70,000. The mower in particular is well over $100,000. I once saw a guy with a mower that said, a bumper sticker that said, "This is my Lamborghini." So, and he's not wrong. And because the heads, especially on those things, are incredible. And so, you pay $5 a bale for them to come in and bale it. I mean, look at that. It's like $500,000 worth of equipment out there. It's just unbelievable. So let us know if you want us to do more videos on this stuff. Did you have any more questions for me, or?
Not at this time. I think that was pretty much all I had as far as that goes. You know.
Yeah. Yeah, and I would be happy. One of the things I've been contemplating doing is calling the guy at Comstock Seed and see if he would let us do a tour too. That'd be fun.
Cool.
Yeah. So thank you guys so much, and drop your comments below.